So before the time of Galileo, people described moving things as slow or fast. Such descriptions are vague. Galileo is credited with being the first one to measure speed by considering the distance covered and the time it takes. He defines speed as distance covered per unit time. Okay, this seems important. It talks about a definition for speed, so I probably need to come back to that. Here's an equation that kind of stands out to me too a little bit. So a cyclist who covers 16 meters in a time of 2 seconds, for example, has a speed of 8 meters per second. Interestingly, Galileo could easily measure distance, but in his day measuring time, short times was no easy matter, so he sometimes used his own pulse, and sometimes the dripping of drops from what he called a water clock that he devised. Any combination of distance and time units is legitimate for measuring speed. So, okay, distance and time units. For motor vehicles or long distances, units of kilometers per hour and miles per hour work. For shorter distances, meters per second are more useful. The symbol slash is read as per, which means divided by. Okay. Throughout the book, we'll primarily use meters per second. Okay, so meters per second, we're using a lot here. So I just kind of marked things as I came to them, things that stood out to me. Once I've done that, then what I like to do next is I like to figure out, okay, now that I've figured that out, what are the important things? What's going on here? So this first section was talking to me about what speed is. This was how to solve. This was kind of an example. And this was units. So now that I've done that, now I'm ready to do the next part, which is come up with my questions and my clarifications. So I'm going to use the reading to help me out here. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, what are some things that I need to explain or clarify? So for starters, I said that this is about speed. This is where it talks what speed is. So I probably need a question about the definition of speed, right? In order for someone to really know that they understand this, they should probably be able to explain what speed is. So I'm going to write my first question. What is speed? And then I want you to answer it. You may or may not be able to. There may be some of these that you get confused on, so you do the best you can. You ask for help. But from my reading, speed was distance covered per unit time. So distance, I'm going to use my own words just because it makes more sense to me that way. So distance traveled over some amount of time. Nice. Amount of time. All right, so there's my first one. So now I go back and I say, okay, next thing that stood out to me is how to solve. Okay, so there's an equation thing. So remember, some of the questions should be basic questions, but some of them should be more in-depth. So this is a good chance to do a more in-depth one. So I'm going to say, how fast is a car traveling that goes 10 miles in 2 minutes, which is very fast. Okay, so it gave me the equation. Speed was distance over time. And so 10 miles divided by 2 minutes. Five miles per minute. It's a little hard to read, my apologies. Okay, so then this middle section is about an example. So it talked about going 16 meters in 2 seconds. Well, I kind of did an example like that already. The rest of this middle paragraph is talking about like how he measured it. That's probably not something you would necessarily have to know to still prove you understood speed. If you didn't know exactly how Galileo did it, you would probably still understand speed. So down here in units, this is probably important. So I want to do something about units. So maybe what are, what types of units do we use to measure speed? So what units are used to measure speed? Okay, and the reading said any distance and time units. So any distance, so that's things like miles, meters, feet. Divided by any time. And that'd be things like minutes, hours, seconds. There we go. So I've made it all the way through my reading section that I did. I'm confident that all the things that I have written down for questions are things someone should be able to answer if they were going to be able to explain velocity. You should know what it is. You should know how to solve it. You should know what units are used. Okay? So now we get to clarification. And clarification are either things that are confusing or things that are not explained well. So for example, one good thing that I think might be confusing to some people is the slash symbol. Okay? I think that might be confusing to people. So the slash symbol means divided by and is read as per. So miles per hour would be miles divided by hours. So things that I think people might be confused on. I was not confused on that, but I could see why someone would be confused on that. I could see how that would be hard for somebody. Okay? Another one is, who is Galileo? So it talks about Galileo 3 times. Galileo, Galileo, Galileo. But it doesn't actually describe anything about him other than he came up with this water clock idea, other than he was the first person to start measuring things. So another thing that might be worth clarifying is who Galileo was. And that might be something you would have to look up or something you might have to ask me. And Galileo was a scientist in 1500s, one of the first to measure motion and prove Earth wasn't the center of the universe or solar system. There you go.